Hi, my name is Eric Darling. I'm a veteran. And today we're going to talk about some things that involve veterans, but we're also going to talk about what a veteran actually is, because a veteran isn't just one thing. So as I talk, I'm probably going to be focusing more so on employers because it's important for you to understand what you're dealing with, because I know that you're looking for that labor force, and veterans can definitely be some of that labor force.
So my name's Jennifer Spetler. I work with the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. I did not serve in the military, but my father served 22 years in the Air Force, so we moved a lot, and I got to experience firsthand as an Air Force brat when your father leaves service after similar experience to Eric for the first time, what it's like to transition into a civilian life.
So as I said, my name is Eric Darling. I am a veteran. I served in the military for altogether 30 years. 20 of that was active. I have one combat tour, and I've had lots of experiences there. Those experiences have brought me to where I am today. I am the executive director of an organization called Valhalla Veteran Services, and we provide counseling for free to those people that are dumb enough to run towards danger while everybody else runs away. Now, you're going to find that when you deal with veterans, our humor may be a little bit different, and sometimes it's a bit abrasive, and that's something that we have to learn to deal with. Mm-hmm. But when I say to other veterans that you are dumb enough to run towards danger while others run away, they think that's funny, although you may not. So, as far as employment goes, one of the first things to understand is, what is a veteran? I know that when I say the word veteran, and those words come out of my mouth, you form an idea in your brain that's probably been formed over a long time with lots of experiences of what a veteran might be. So for you, that image, that archetype in your mind might be that a veteran is someone who is between 25 and 30 years old, has a beard, and maybe you think that person is totally broken because of their experiences. When I say veteran, you might think of an archetype of something like a Vietnam-aged person, a person who is 75 years old. Again, you might think of them, perhaps, that they're broken, that they have been through a very hard time. So those ideas that you have about a veteran are produced because of experiences and information that you've received over the years, but they may not actually be true. So let me give you two variations of what a veteran is. Now, I told you, for instance, that I served for 30 years and retired from the Army. So I'm a little bit different than a 25-year-old who served for 4 years. So my enculturation in the military has been much deeper. So in many ways, it's far more difficult for me to relate to this world than it might be for someone who is 25 years old. I also have many experiences in the military that someone that's 25 years old and spent 4 years in the military has not had. So when you're talking about a veteran population as a group of people that you might want to bring into your labor force, you need to understand that there's a wide variance of who we are. So what I would suggest to you is try to deal with those archetypes in your mind and be willing to look at the human being that's sitting in front of you as a single individual, because all of our experiences are very different. I also want to deal with stigma. Well, let me go back for just a second. So that 25-year-old, if you have in your mind that he's broken, if you have in your mind that he has gone or she has gone through experiences that have created problems for them, you may be totally wrong, because what you might actually be dealing with is a person that, although they didn't go to college, they have real life experience in leadership and many transferable skills that you may not know about. Now, here's the problem you're going to run into with that 25-year-old, is when you start doing your interview process, they might start talking like Dwight from The Office because they're nervous. Remember that you, as an employer, make them nervous. And so when they get nervous, they revert to the way that we trained them, and they start doing things that are familiar to them. And so they start using lingo that you don't understand. It's perfectly all right for you to ask, what does that mean? They're going to use lots of acronyms, and it's okay for you to stop them and say, I don't understand you. Can you please tell me what that means? And if you listen carefully, what you may find is that they're giving you pertinent information that will help you and your company to use them as a valuable resource. So that 25-year-old, by that time he's 25 years old, and let's say they've spent 4 to 6 years in the military, they have real-world experience in leadership. They have real-world experience in the job that they did, which they will refer to as their MOS or their billet. Again, terminology that does not translate from the military world to the civilian world. But you as an employer, if you want that asset, because I'm trying to let you know that that veteran is an asset to you. He can make money for you, which, let's face it, at the end of the day, that's the important thing. This is a person who can be a very valuable resource, but it's going to take a little bit of effort on your part to understand what they're trying to tell you. So that 25-year-old has real-world leadership ability. Now, I'm going to give you a weakness too. They're not as patient as the people that you're used to dealing with in the workplace. Some of the problems that 25-year-old is going to face is that he or she actually believes that there are rules that need to be followed. And so when they see a person that shows up late and they see a person that doesn't put their whole effort into a job, they get frustrated. But let's turn that. Isn't that exactly the type of person you want to hire? Aren't you looking for someone that's loyal? Somebody that's actually gone through hard things and come out of it on the other side, and I'll even say that they've come out of it on the other side stronger. Now let's talk about my crowd, the crowd that's a little older, the retiree. You know, one of the difficulties I had when I started looking for a job, because I looked for a job when I came out of the military. By the way, I have a master's degree in counseling. So I don't fit the bill of what many have an archetype in their mind, that I'm uneducated. I had a bachelor's degree 15 years ago. And that was actually part of Army education, that they want us to be more educated. So my last assignment in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, I was full-time there. I was the senior human resources sergeant for a local unit here in Wilkes-Barre. And what that meant was I had complete responsibility for the payroll, for the administration, for all of the EO, sexual harassment, all of those classes. I had complete responsibility for all of the HR operations of a group of about 400 people. So as I'm going through this resume, the person that I'm sitting with is saying to me, Eric, I hear what you're telling me. It sounds like you were pretty much the equivalent of a vice president of HR for a 400-man company. And I would say, no, I was not. I was the senior human resources sergeant. Because to me, that felt like a lie, if I were to say that I were the vice president of that. It took lots of back and forth with me and that individual. And honestly, I don't know if I ever ended up putting vice president on there, because I really never was a vice president, but my level of responsibility was really at that level. So getting a service member or a retiree to translate that experience is very difficult. And understanding that there is a huge difference between that 25-year-old, who, in my mind, is a far better hire than a person right out of college, and the difference between somebody like me that's a retiree that probably had responsibility equivalent somewhere in the realm of your executive level, you got to be able to split those things in your mind. So when I went out into the world and I started looking for jobs, now remember, I just retired after 30 years combined service from the military, and I have this brand new fresh master's degree from a counseling, from a school. And I go out and I start looking for jobs, and they tell me that they would like to hire me for $15 an hour, and that they want me to work with juveniles or whatever else, and that I have a supervisor who's 20 years old. Well, probably 26. You know, that's kind of insulting. Part of my journey has been understanding that my experience doesn't translate to your world evenly. I understand now that the education, the certificates, all those things are needed. Sometimes they're just simply legal requirements. But for you as an employer, I would like to ask that you take a risk when you're looking at veterans, because we're very different than what you think, and it's not always the fact that we're broken. And that, by the way, brings me to another thing. One of the biggest things that I think we have to overcome as veterans in getting employment is the idea that we are broken. The reality is some of us are. Some of us really can't function because of the experiences we've had. And by the way, sometimes it's not experiences through the military, but things that happened before that. But some of us are exactly what you want. We're strong, we're educated, and we have experiences that have made us stronger through the experience.
And more of what I wanted to speak to is really just to veterans and in part to employers, particular to employers, and following up on what Eric had said. I think he hit the nail on the head in that, there are some strong attributes that veterans have regardless of age, but because of their experience in the armed forces, they've seen a lot more and taken on a lot of responsibility and come out on the harder end of that experience that most college kids have not ever had to manage on their own. And I'm telling you from firsthand experience as a college graduate and going out into the workforce. But I think, with that in hand for employers, I encourage you to ask on your applications, on your website, did you serve in the armed forces? Because that's the beginning of a gateway to understanding who you're talking to, and really can flourish a person in that interview. What I want to say to the veterans is when you're transitioning to civilian life, know that there are so many resources available to you and that you are not alone. And while it may feel like especially overwhelming that you're transitioning into this life that you were somewhat a part of but really didn't know, is that you have advocates for you in your local community. And the first place that I want you to go when you're transitioning out or thinking of looking for a new job opportunity is talk to your local county director. You can go onto the Department of Military Affairs website, www.dmva.pa.gov. There you can find a list of any county director in all 67 counties throughout the Commonwealth. In addition, I'd like you to register with the Pennsylvania Veterans Registry. You'll receive regular digest about job opportunities that's specifically targeting you as a veteran and looking because they know what you bring to the table. And for employers, I'd like you to offer in joining that because it's really looking at how to making sure that our men and women that come back, that they're able to continue to flourish and live the lives that they want to lead when they return from service.
It can be a frustrating experience looking for employment. Again, talking about that 25-year-old, you had responsibilities way beyond what most people in the civilian world have. I know that many of you have had responsibility easily. You might have attained the pay grade of E5, being a sergeant or a petty officer in the Navy. I know that you've had responsibility for $25 million of equipment at different points. I know that it's frustrating when you go out into the world and you feel like nobody understands you and you feel like nobody cares about what you did. But I'm going to challenge you on two things. Number one, I want you to stop being entitled. It is your job to translate your experience to the employer. It is not their job to understand you. It is your job to help them understand. So that means you have to make the effort to change the way you speak and the way you approach things, because they're going to actually tell you to smile, which I know you've been told not to. So you need to change some things in the way that you relate to the world if you want to get the job. Number two, I said you feel like people don't care. I'm going to tell you the truth. Many people don't. An employer that's looking at hiring you isn't hiring you because you served your country. They're hiring you because they want you to make money for their company, and you need to accept that and deal with it. The best advice I can have to you is change your mentality and work on transition, because your time in service is over and you need to accept that. It's time to move on. You can still find purpose in this world even after service.